qualitative and quantitative environmental factors. So quest is nothing but the qualitative and the quantitative factors of the environment. When it comes in terms of one person company, so it is a kind of a private entity which is been completely managed, controlled and ruled by a single individual person, that we call it as a one person company. Political, economical, social, technological, environmental, legal factors, that we call it as a pestle analysis. Hello everyone, a warm welcome to one and all. I am Mr. Hemant Kumar from the Department of Commerce and Management, Vidhyaashram First Aid College, MYSURU, the Temple of Excellence. In today's session, we are going with the subject called Business Environment. It's about Unit 1, that is Introduction to Business Environment for 3rd semester BBA students. This is the agenda of today's session. We are going with the topics of types of business. There are various kinds of business. It may be a private sector business, public sector business, joint sector business, which is collaboration of a private and the public entity, and MS, MES business, PPPs and OPCs. These are all the things that we need to cover in today's session. And repeatedly, I need to say, these questions are the expected question in the exam point of view only for 5 marks. They won't ask this kind of questions for 10 marks. Followed by environmental scanning tools. We are going through certain environmental scanning tools which is beneficial for the business to conduction of the business and reach out the goals, that is desired goals of the business. Role of business in economic development. So what exactly the role that is being played by the business entity in the economic development of our country. So these are all the things that we need to go through in today's session. So when it comes in terms of business, so as we saw, there are various kinds of business in the business environment. Okay, so this business is multi-dimensional. It have various dimensions. Okay, so it is one of the feature of the business. Okay, so firstly, a private sector business, public sector business, joint sector, MS, MES, PPPs and OPCs. So these are all the kinds of business entity that is available. So these are the various dimensions that I can say. When it comes in terms of types of business, so firstly, we are going with the private sector business followed by public sector business. So here, when it comes in terms of private sector is a segment of the national economy. So see, whatever the business it is, whether it is a public sector or a private sector, it is a segment of the national economy which give the contribution for the national economy. See what happens, it is a kind of the economic activity, the economic generation get happen directly or indirectly. It is a contribution for the economy of our country, that is owned and controlled and managed by the private individuals or the enterprises. So the name itself, it is going to say that it is a private entity which is owned and controlled and managed by the private people or the private individual entity. Done. When it comes in terms of the public sector, it is a part of the country's economy. So whether it is a private sector or the public sector, it is a part of the country's economy, is owned, controlled and funded by the government. So these kinds of the companies or the enterprises is being completely funded, completely owned, ruled and completely managed by the government. It includes all the levels of government, whether it is a national or regional. When it comes in terms of national government, it is about central government or federal government, and regional government is about the state government. Okay, so whether it is a central government or whether it is a state government, okay, so that entity we call it as a public entity. Done. So I just brief this concept. This is a very important topic in the exam point of view. So private sector company, public sector company. Private sector companies are the companies which has been completely owned, managed and controlled by the private people or the private entity, that we call it as a private sector people, completely managed. There is no interruption or the interference of the government when it comes in terms of a private company. When it comes in terms of a public sector company, okay, so the entity that has been owned, completely owned, managed and controlled completely by the public sector, that is the government. Okay, whether it is a state government or central government, that we call it as a public sector company. Okay, so when it comes in terms of a private sector company, Wipro company, Infosys, okay, L&T. So these are all the examples for the private sector companies. When it comes in terms of public sector companies, Indian Railway, it is purely public sector, and also KSRTC, it is purely public sector. When it comes in terms of KSRTC, it is been completely owned, ruled and managed completely by the state government. But when it comes in terms of Indian Railway, it is owned, ruled and managed, controlled completely by the central government, that is public sector company. Joint sector company. Joint sector is a special kind of the partnership. So the name itself, it is going to say that it is a kind of the partnership business where there is a collaboration of two entities. That is, one is a public sector, second one is a private sector. The economy where both government, that is a public sector, and the private business, it is a private sector, to work together to run an enterprise. So hence I mean to say that it is a collaboration of both public entity and private entity collaborated together to rule the kind of a business that we call it as a joint sector business. The name itself, it is going to say it is a joint sector business. Next topic is micro, small and medium enterprise, that we call it as a MSME. Micro, small and medium enterprise. When it comes in terms of micro, small and medium enterprise, where are the business that is operated by the small scale? It is not like a large scale industries. Okay, so these are all the small scale cottage industries which is going to generate the economy to our country, which is going to benefit for the economic development of our nation. See what happens is, so these are all the small kinds of the industry or the cottage industry or the micro industry that I can say. So where as we know, more than 60% of Indians are dependent on agriculture. Means most of the people, they could not able to afford for the large industries. They are going with this kind of the micro or the small scale industry, which is going to benefit for the economic development of our nation. Okay, see what happens is, if more than 60% of the people are engaged in this kind of the industry, so it is a kind of the contribution for the GDP of our nation. So that we call it as a micro, small and the medium enterprises. Public private partnership. See what happens is, in the previous slide we had gone through the joint sector. It is a collaboration of public and private entity to run a kind of the business where there is a mutual contribution from the public sector and the private sector. The best example is HCG and Bharat Cancer Hospital collaborated together to form a hospital called Bharat Cancer Hospital. See, that is an example for joint sector. So there is a contribution from the government for HCG Bharat Cancer Hospital, and also there is a contribution from the public sector. So that is example for this joint sector. When it comes in terms of public private partnership, so there is a partnership kind of the business which is being collaborated by public entity and the private entity to conduct certain activity or a certain project within the specified period of time. So it is not for the longer period of time, it is not permanent. But when it comes in terms of this joint sector company, it keep on going. Okay, it keep on happening, it keep on running, it does not change. Okay, so that we call it as a joint sector. But this is only specified for a particular period of time. After that particular event or the particular thing get happen, okay, so the contract get end. These all things happens on the basis of the contract, that we call it as a public private partnership. See what happens is, the public private partnership is a system where the government, that is a public sector, and the private companies, that is a private sector, work together to build or run project that serve the public. Okay, so these are all the temporary or the tentative things which is going to happen. Okay, so it may be in terms of project, it may be for the specified period of time. Okay, so that we call it as a public private partnership. Okay, so in PPPs, both side shares investment, risk, responsibilities and profits will be shared. Okay, so I repeat, in these kinds of the business, the risk of the business will be shared by both public and the private entity. The risk of the business will be shared, and investment also will be shared, and the responsibility will be shared for both public and the private entity. That kind of the entity we call it as a public private partnership. Just I will give you the example. Okay, so we may notice a number of tolls. Okay, so after construction of road, the private people that they are going to put a toll and charge the charges by the customers. So this is a way how the public and the private partnership is going to happen to earn the money for the specified period of time. Say for example, so there is 10-way road that has been constructed from Mysuru to Bangalore. Okay, so if we want to travel, if we want to use that particular road, we are supposed to pay the toll for the private entity or the private people or the private contract agents. Okay, so because they had invested on that particular road, okay, hence they are going to charge the charges. So that is been shared with both public entity and private entity. Okay, even public people are also contributed for that particular 10-way road. Even the private people are also contributed for that 10-way road, but they are going to charge the charges for the use of that road. This is the actual way how this kind of the business is being conducted, that we call it as a public private partnership. So public entity and the private entity both together collaborated together to form a particular kind of a business or a contract, that we call it as a public private partnership. One person company, it's about OPC. When it comes in terms of one person company, so it is a kind of a private entity which has been completely managed, controlled and ruled by a single individual person, that we call it as a one person company. One person company is a type of a business structure where a single individual runs. Okay, so he is a one who is going to own the business, manage the business and control the complete business operation, the entire company. Okay, so he is the only person who is going to bear the risk of the company. He is going to take the decisions of the company. He is going to make all the kinds of the activity inside the company without interruption of any other people, that we call it as a one person company. It is a special type of company, that is a private entity or the private entity structure, that I can say, introduced under the Companies Act 2013. OPC is been introduced under the Companies Act 2013, that we call it as a one person company. Environmental scanning tools. Okay, so the name itself, it is going to say that it is a tool which is used to scan the environment, that is business environment. So what exactly the business environment is, so how exactly it is going to scan, and what exactly the profitability of the business environment by conducting this kind of the activities. See, what happens is, when it comes in terms of the environment scanning tools, these tools act as a indicators which is going to predict the future of the business and to avoid the risk of uncertainty. So by using this kind of the tools, so the success rate can be increased when it comes in terms of the organization. So let me say, okay, so when it comes in terms of the business environment tools, it is going to analyze both internal and external environment of the organization. So as I had explained in the previous session, so this internal environment can be completely controllable. Okay, external environment up to some extent we can control, and after that we cannot control. In that, it has been classified into two categories, micro and macro. Okay, so micro sectors we can be up to some extent we can control. When it comes in terms of macro factors, so it is completely uncontrollable in nature. Let me say what exactly the business environment scanning tools and how exactly it is going to affect the business environment. So environmental scanning involves monitoring external and internal factors. So it is going to monitor both internal and external factors, internal environment factors, external environment factors affecting an organization. Okay, so the organization get affected by two factors. One is internal environment, second one is external environment factors. So which are all the external environment factors? So rather than focusing only on the internal environmental factors, because it is in our control, we can do anything. Okay, so we can take a right decision at a right time. But when it comes in terms of external environment factors, okay, so we cannot control it. Okay, so it is non-controllable in nature. So we must consider those all things and take the decision by considering the environmental scanning tools. So whether it is economic environment, technological environment, social, political aspects, so we are supposed to consider these all external environmental factors to scan the business environment. It helps in strategic decision making. Okay, so here whatever the decisions that is going to taken in the business organization, it is a strategic decision making process. Okay, so there is a strategy that has been used. Identify opportunities and managing risk. Okay, so here the people, they are supposed to go with identification of the opportunity that is available in the external environment, and also they must consider the risk level. Okay, so up to what extent that they can bear the risk. So there is no profitability without risk, so we must take the risk for the better profitability. Let's understand the concept of environmental scanning detail. Okay, so here when it comes in terms of environmental scanning tools, so we use four kinds of environmental scanning tools. One is SWOT analysis, pest analysis, ETOP and quest analysis. So these are all the things that we need to consider while making a business decision. These tools act as an indicator which is going to predict the future of the business. Say for example, okay, so we had sold 2000 units previous year. So I want to know what exactly the sales which is going to happen next year. Okay, so these are all the tools by analyzing the market, that is external environment of the market. So we need to take certain decisions in our business, whether the competitor get arised, whether the customer are not satisfied, whether should we make any kind of the strategies, should we go under any kind of the operations, whether we are supposed to go with any kind of the new kinds of the project, that is a contribution that is being given by the business to the society. So these are all the decisions that is being made by the organization towards the success of the business. So firstly, quest analysis, qualitative and quantitative environmental factors. So quest is nothing but the qualitative and the quantitative factors of the environment. So I will just give you the example. So these factors is from the external environment. When it come in terms of the quantitative factors, so what is the actual number of customers that is available for my particular brand in the particular geographical location. Say for example, in whole Mysore, okay, my customers are 10 lakh people. Okay, so that we call it as a quantitative analysis. Okay, when it come in terms of qualitative analysis, among that 10 lakh customers, okay, so how much customers are my potential customers, how many customers are my loyal customers, and how many customers are my normal customers. So these are all the things that we need to notice. Based on this criteria or based on this qualitative and the quantitative data, so we need to take the business decision, that we call it as a quest analysis, quantitative and the qualitative environmental analysis, that we call it as a quest analysis. Say for example, so my customers are 10 lakh people, among which I may notice 5 lakh are my potential customers, 3 lakh are my customers, and remaining 2 lakh are my loyal customers. Done. So this is the actual way. So we can do the qualitative and the quantitative analysis. So here we get to know who exactly is my loyal customer and how to sell my product to other customer other than loyal customers, because loyal customers are the one who doesn't even change the brand for any kind of the changes which is going to happen in the market. Whether the competitor comes, the competitor go, whether the price get increased, okay, so whatever the things that is going to happen in the market, he does not change the brand. Okay, that we call it as a loyal customers. Qualitative and the quantitative environmental factors that we need to consider when it comes in terms of quest analysis, which is going to help to make the decision for the future. The next one is ETOP, environmental threat and opportunity profile. So when it comes in terms of the ETOP analysis, so we need to analyze the threats of the external environment followed by the opportunities that is available in the external environment. Threats and opportunities we need to consider, that we call it as a ETOP analysis. So environmental external threats and the opportunities for the strategic planning. Okay, so based on the threats of the business and based on the opportunities that is available in the market, so we need to plan a strategy, okay, for the success of our organization, that we call it as a ETOP analysis, followed by SWOT analysis. So when it comes in terms of ETOP analysis and quest analysis, we are supposed to apply for the external environment, not for the internal environment. When it comes in terms of SWOT analysis, the name itself, it is going to say, it is going to strength, weakness, opportunities and threats. So what happens is, this both strength and weakness, we are supposed to find in internal environment, and the opportunities and threats that we can find in the external environment. I repeat, when it comes in terms of strength and weakness, we are supposed to find in the internal environment. When it comes in terms of opportunities and threats, we need to find out in the external environment. So it helps to identify the strength, weakness, opportunities and the threats in the situation. See, what happens is, so we need to know our strength, means the strength of the organization, the weakness of the organization. Okay, the strength is a kind of the benefit for the organization, that is okay. But when it comes in terms of weakness of the organization, we need to find it out and we must try to resolve the weakness of the organization. Okay, or we are supposed to overcome from the weakness of the organization. Strength and weakness. Opportunities and threats. It is regarding the opportunities that is available in the external environment. So which are all the things, what is is a need of the people, how I can fulfill the need of the people which is not been fulfilled by my competitors. Okay, how I can become unique from my competitors. So this is nothing but the opportunities and threats in the external environment. For example, if there is sudden downfall in the sales of my product, what is the reason? I must find out the reason. If the customers are not satisfied with my product, I must facilitate the good product to him and also to increase my sales. This is the actual way how we must conduct this analysis, that we call it as a SWOT analysis: strength, weakness, opportunities and threat. Strength, weakness, opportunities and threat. When it comes in terms of strength and weakness, we must find in internal environment. When it comes in terms of opportunities and threat, we must find in external environment. The last one is pestle analysis: political, economic, social, technological, environmental and the legal analysis. So that we call it as a pestle analysis. So I repeat: political, economical, social, technological, environmental, legal factors, that we call it as a pestle analysis. So when it comes in terms of business environment, we must to keep in mind the external factors which cannot be controlled in nature. Means these are all the factors which cannot be controlled by the business entity. Hence, business entity must get adapt for this kind of factors, that we call it as a pest analysis. Means we must analyze the complete pestle factors, whether it is a political factor, economic factor, social, cultural factors, technological factor or environmental and the legal factors. So these are all the factors that we need to consider. Okay, here lastly, in the pestle analysis, we must focus on all the criteria which cannot be controlled by the business entity. Hence, there are certain factors which cannot be controlled by the business entity, but we must get adapt for that factors to run our business, that we call it as a pestle analysis. Means whether it is a political factors, so if there is any political thing or rules, norms which must be followed by the organization, if there is any kind of the restrictions. Economic factors, again when it comes in terms of the related to the economy of our country. Social factors and cultural factors, completely regarding the social and the culture of the society, that is for the external environment. Technological factors regarding the upgradation of the technology, regarding the laws, and the environmental and the legal factors, that is regarding the natural environment and also the legal factors that we need to consider. Okay, so these are all the factors that we need to consider and take the decision and move forward when it comes in terms of business environment. So these are all the kinds of the legalities that we need to follow and consider for the betterment of our business or the success of the business. So that we call it as a pestle analysis. There are 4 kinds of analysis: quest analysis, quantitative and the qualitative analysis regarding the quality and the quantity of the external environment. What kind of the customers are available, what quantity of the customers that they are available in the external environment. ETOP, that is nothing but the environmental threats and opportunities profile. Okay, so what are the threats in the environment and what are the opportunities that is available in the external environment. So it's about the external analysis, followed by the SWOT analysis: strength and weakness, that is regarding the internal environment; opportunities and threat, that is related to the external environment; followed by PEST, that is political, economic, social, technological, environmental and the legal factors that we need to consider and take the decision and move forward in the business for the success. If we go through these 4 kinds of the analysis, so we can expect the success in the business. So it is a kind of the business strategy or the business indicator or the environmental indicator that I can say. Role of business in economic development. See, what happens is, the name itself, it is going to say business is a kind of the economic activity which is going to happen, the economic generation which is going to benefit for the nation directly or indirectly. Whether it is a private sector business, whether it is a public sector business, it is a kind of economic activity where the economic activity which is going to happen in the nation, it is a kind of the contribution to our country. Done. So employment generation. See what happens if a number of industries that has been established, if a number of business entities that has been started. Okay, what happens? Firstly, employment generation get happen. It is a kind of the contribution to our economy. See, The employment problem is a major problem for the downfall of the economy of our country. So if they provide the proper employment opportunities in our country, definitely our country can become a developed nation. And in the same way, our country should make sure regarding the industrialization and the privatization of the sectors. Then only our country can get developed. That is about the employment generation. So what happens if a number of industries get established, organization get started, okay, there is an employment opportunity that is available for the people, which a kind of the economic problem can be solved of our nation. Production of goods and services. So this is a major problem that is being faced so far from our country. Okay, so what happens is the simple concept. There is two kind of thing that we need to consider. One is import, second one is export. What happens if we import the foreign goods? It is a kind of expenditure to our country. Okay, so what happens if we export the good? It is a kind of the income to our country. So if we manufacture more commodities, more goods, okay, we can export the product to the foreign country and earn the capital. So this is one of the reason for the development of most of the developed countries. Say for example, America, Russia, Japan. Okay, see what happens. These people are going to export maximum amount of the product to the foreign countries and earn the capital. So that is a reason for the development of the economy of most of the developed countries. Okay, even if India want to become a developed country, we must to maximize the export and minimize the import. The Make in India concept came to our country few years ago, but also even today we are going to export maximum number of the product from the foreign countries. Even the government had made certain restrictions regarding the equilibrium of country, but also we must avoid the foreign product and use the Indian product for the development and the betterment of our economy. See what happens is, just I will give you the example. Okay, most of the people, what do they do is, they are going to use the foreign branded product rather than using Indian product. Okay, see what happens is, so foreign brand, it is a belief of the people, if they purchase the foreign brand product, okay, it is more durable. Okay, so when compared to Indian product, whether it is expensive also, they are going to afford it just because of the beautiful feel that they get and the durability of that particular thing. So that is the reason. So we must always avoid using the foreign brand product and adapt for the Indian product. And in the same way, so we must maximize the export of goods and services to the foreign country, which generate the income to our country. Then it becomes the contribution for the economy of our country. Just I will give you the example. What happens is, even today, we are maximum amount of the war equipments or the Indian army weapons. Okay, so that has been imported from the foreign countries. That is, they are going to afford lakhs of crores. Okay, so instead of importing, we can manufacture the same thing. It is a kind of the saving again. So if we manufacture the product and export to the foreign country, it is a kind of the revenue, right? And in the same way, smartphone also. The people, we can notice maximum number of the people or the Indians, that I can say more than 80% of the Indians go with the foreign branded mobile, whether it is Apple iPhone, Samsung mobile, OnePlus, Oppo, Vivo, whatever it is. Okay, so maximum number of the people go with the foreign branded mobile. Okay, so what is the reason they won't go with the Indian brands like Carbon, Lava? Why? Because they like the durability of the product. So that is the reason. So we must using the foreign brand, keep using the Indian brand under the Digital India and also the Make in India concept, and prepare maximum amount of the product for the betterment of our future of our country. Income and wealth creation. See what happens if we export maximum, income get created and wealth get created in our country. So we must create the income and wealth to our country. Investment and capital formation. So we must do the investment, whether it is a foreign direct investment or any kind of the business investment it is, which is going to generate the capital to our country. Say for example, Americans, more than 40% they are going to invest in the capital market. When it comes in terms of Indians, there are only 4% of Indians who are going to invest in the capital market. See, if they invest in the capital market, it is a kind of economic generation to our country. Okay, and when it comes in terms of Americans, they are going to earn. It is one of the reason for the development of their country. Contribution to the government revenue. So here they are supposed to contribute to the government revenue by paying the tax or whatever the things or the norms that is being made by the government. Innovation and technology. So technically and the innovatively, so there must be a development in our country. Then only it is a kind of the economic contribution to the country. Balanced regional development. So there must be focus on the rural areas rather than the urban areas. See what happens. So most of the people, more than 60 or 70% of Indians are based on the agriculture. If the rural development happens, definitely the economically the India get developed. So it is a kind of the economic contribution to the country. Export and foreign exchange earnings. See what happens is, if we export maximum goods to the foreign country, it is a kind of the earning, and foreign exchange earning. So we are supposed to invest on the forex. Okay, so foreign currency if we invest on, so based on that investment we can earn the profit. Again, it will become the contribution to our country. So these are all the ways how we can follow the things and become the reason for the economic development of our nation. In the next session, we are going with the unit 2, that is economic environment. Thank you.